So earlier this month I released a video, Pop! OS versus Ubuntu 18.10, comparing them, doing some benchmarks and stuff like that. When I was making that video, I realized that I haven't used, or otherwise I guess installed, Ubuntu on actual hardware in about a year, probably a bit more. Now if you've been around on my channel for a while, you'll know that I did most of my early videos on Ubuntu. My early videos were openSUSE, but I spent a lot of time on Ubuntu using Unity 7. When Canonical announced that they were doing away with Unity, I switched away from Ubuntu and I've been kind of bouncing around ever since. So after making that video, I decided, now seems like a good time to give Ubuntu another try on my desktop. Now you might be looking at the title and saying, boy, 2 weeks? That's not a long time to figure out if you really like something, right? Well, in this video I'm going to talk about my experiences with Ubuntu 18.10, and yes, 2 weeks isn't a lot of time, but it was more than enough time for me to make my determination on whether or not I like it. So just as a forward, this video is going to be about the Ubuntu distribution of Linux, not Kubuntu, not KDE Neon, not Xubuntu, not Elementary OS, just Ubuntu, the flagship distribution. None of the derivatives, none of the downstreams, nothing. First, I want to say snaps are really cool. During my test drive, I used it from a regular desktop user's perspective, so I used the Ubuntu Store. The Ubuntu Store is, in my opinion, the single best store metaphor in all of the Linux distributions, that I've used anyways. I found it to be very usable, functional. It had an absolute ton of apps, I mean like a ton, and it was awesome. It was generally really good to use. The way that you can customize the permissions, you can choose which versions of snaps that you can get, all from the Ubuntu Store. It's a really good experience. Now I really enjoy the default style. Now I'm using the dash to panel, which is kind of my standard for GNOME desktops, but the style and the general look and feel is phenomenal. I absolutely love it. Relatively few things require a password, like mounting other hard drives on your system. For just a desktop operating system, in my opinion, you shouldn't be asked for your password for every damn thing, including putting in a USB thumbstick or going to an internal hard drive that isn't mounted by default. You shouldn't have to use your password for that. That's silly. And Ubuntu has really good defaults for that. The standard bash RC is really good. It's colorful, which I really like. The automatic find and completion for non-installed apps is really cool. If you try to use something or call a function or a command that isn't installed, it somehow knows how to find it and it gives you recommendations. That's awesome. Not a lot of distributions do that. And one thing that I've always appreciated about Ubuntu that no other distribution seems to do for some reason is when you install applications and services that have daemons and groups, Ubuntu will automatically create the groups. It sometimes adds your user to the groups, and it enables the daemon for you. And that's the end of the list of things I liked about Ubuntu. So let's talk about the things I didn't like. So there's no real good way for me to quantify this. I tried to use a stopwatch to capture some data to kind of show that, hey, the operating system is generally sluggish, but it was weird. Basically, the whole thing just felt slow. Applications took like several seconds to launch. The terminal was sluggish, specifically when you launch it for the first time. It just like sits there. I don't really understand why. The calculator, the system monitor. Now some games just wouldn't work. And when I say some games, I specifically mean Elder Scrolls Online. Now you guys have seen footage of me playing Elder Scrolls Online. That was actually done on openSUSE. openSUSE worked right out the box. I didn't even have to set anything up. I enabled eSync to get better performance, but it wasn't required. I couldn't even get ESO to install and actually run on Ubuntu. As you can see here, it starts downloading and then it just stops responding, and I have to kill all of the wine processes just to stop it. I don't really understand what's going on here. And considering it works on openSUSE, not Ubuntu, it's hard not to blame Ubuntu for it, but I don't really know exactly what the cause was. Now the last big glaring issue I've saved for last, and it's about snaps. Now I don't want to rehash what I talked about in my previous video when I compared snaps to Flatpaks. I'm just gonna be honest here. The user experience in regards to snaps is terrible. Now in my previous video about snaps and Flatpaks, and early on in this video, I said I love snaps, and I do. It's a really great concept for a lot of reasons. but the execution is just like fundamentally flawed, and I don't understand why. Despite the glaring issues that Snap has, they are the default application choice, for lack of a better term. Like when you go to install an application from the Ubuntu store, there's duplicates of various applications, and that's a problem in and of itself. But at the top of the list are always the snaps. Now there's a number of problems with snaps, but the two biggest ones are the startup times and the styling. Now everybody knows about the styling. In a lot of apps, the styling is just broken, but the startup time is unreal. So let's take VS Code here, for example. 30 seconds. It takes 30 seconds to launch. And guess what? The file dialog styling is broken. Look at the file path. There's no spaces. Like what? How? Like what is even happening here? And considering Ubuntu's position in the marketplace, like if you go to look for a desktop Linux distribution, you're going to find Ubuntu. When you install Ubuntu, this is your user experience. And quite honestly, as a Linux user, I want to see Linux on the desktop. That's embarrassing. So to kind of summarize this video, there are a lot of little things that I like about Ubuntu. The styling, the App Store itself, stuff like that. I really like it. I appreciate it. But there are several huge, glaring issues about Ubuntu, specifically snaps, that I just can't handle. So that was my experience and my feelings about Ubuntu. Why don't you guys let me know how you feel in the comments? Specifically, if you use Ubuntu, like not Kubuntu or Xubuntu or whatever, just Ubuntu, how do you feel about the startup times? Be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I appreciate all your support, and thanks for watching.